Good morning. Our very special guests, Mrs. Roma Allen, wife of the late Dr. Rickert Allen, and Christopher Allen, their son, Professor the Most Honorable Sir Kenneth Hall, former Governor General of Jamaica and Chancellor of the UCC, Mrs. Audrey Sewell, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the UCC, Dr. Winston Adams, Group Executive Chair, Mrs. Geraldine Adams, Deputy Group Executive Chair for UCC, Professor Dennis Gale, University President, Professor Bernadette Warner, Senior Advisor for Institutional Effectiveness, Mr. Patrick Hilton, President and Group CEO of NCB, Mrs. Nadine Matthews Blair, Chief Digital and Marketing Officer and CEO of the NCB Foundation, Mr. Houghton Cummings, Head, Group Human Resources and Facilities Division of the National Commercial Bank, members of the NCB family, Dr. Noel Cowell, Senior Lecturer of the Mona School of Business, University of the West Indies, Professor Evan Dugan, Interim President of the Caribbean Maritime University, past and present students and members of the UCC family, representatives of the media, ladies and gentlemen joining us on Zoom and on Facebook Live, morning to you. The University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, in collaboration with the National Commercial Bank, welcomes you to the UCC NCB Inaugural Memorial Lecture in honor of the late Rickert Allen. Dr. Allen served as UCC Board Chairperson until his death in April 2020. He was also the Senior General Manager of Group Human Resources and Facilities at the National Commercial Bank. Today, the focus of our lecture will be on the concept of transformational leadership, a concept to which Dr. Allen was committed and which he expressed in his life and his work. The theme for our inaugural memorial lecture, transformational leadership and readiness for change, will be explored through discussing Dr. Allen's life and works and through interacting with our panelists who have practiced transformational leadership in this time of challenge and change. Ladies and gentlemen, we also will have later on today a special event that will seek to memorialize this great man. And so we invite you to participate in all of the activities that we have today. At this time, I invite you to stand for the playing of the National Anthem, following which Mrs. Nicole Brackett-Walters, Group Marketing and Corporate Communications Manager for NCB, will come with the invocation.
Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for the life of Dr. Rickert Allen and for his contribution to the NCB Financial Group, the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, and to our country, Jamaica. Today, we celebrate his life through this memorial lecture, and we invite you, Father, to preside over this event. As we discuss transformational leadership and readiness, a theme that was near and dear to Dr. Allen, we pray for your blessing upon all the participants, and may the content that is discussed here bring value to everyone. We pray for your continued guidance and healing for his family, and may they be comforted by their memories of him. His contributions are unforgettable, and we thank you for blessing our lives with him. Let your will be done, Father, as we share today. Amen.
Amen and amen. Thank you. That was Mrs. Nicole Brackett Walters. Thank you for providing the invocation to open our event today. Joining us at this time to bring welcome and the opening remarks for this event is Professor Dennis Gale, the UCC president. Professor Dennis Gale will now bring the welcome and the opening remarks.
Welcome to the inaugural memorial lecture in honor of Dr. Rickert Allen. I first met Dr. Allen in mid-2017 when we discussed the possibility that he might consider joining the UCC Board of Directors, adding this commitment to his role as Senior General Manager of the Group Human Resources and Facilities Division of the National Commercial Bank, Jamaica Limited, among other service contributions. After an extended discussion, I was expecting him to say that he would think about our proposal. Instead, he shook my hand in acceptance. In the course of our subsequent board meetings, his fellow directors found that we could always count on Dr. Allen to be incisive and clear, while exemplifying integrity and commitment to bring his capabilities to bear on the applied meaning of the term effective governance. By May 2019, when I relinquished the role of board chairman, we all agreed that he would be an excellent replacement. During the meetings that followed, we enjoyed his recurring comment that we were all living in volatile, uncertain, confusing, and ambiguous times, and his consistent advocacy that it was essential for an organization seeking to position itself for success to be very agile and to take a long strategic view of the business environment, rising above the pressures and the clamor of the moment. We had our last board meeting together in the UCC boardroom on Thursday, April the 9th, 2020, and shared post-meeting refreshments as he hurried to his next meeting at NCB. We agreed to discuss follow-up matters during the weekend. When I attempted to call him, Dr. Allen did not answer his phone. I subsequently learned that he had passed away at his home in Mandeville on Saturday, April the 11th, 2020. It is fitting that we preserve his memory, competences, and character in this way, because Dr. Allen always sought to make a difference to those who crossed his path in an innovative and compelling manner, demonstrating respect and consideration for everyone. We have now agreed to launch this annual lecture series in a way that will be sure to remind all participants of a consummate professional who loved life, his family, friends, enjoyed his acquaintances, and left an indelible memory in the minds of his interlocutors. Thank you so much for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Professor Dennis Gale, the president of the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, with his opening remarks. We thank you, Professor Gale, for those kind words. Ladies and gentlemen, coming now to bring special remarks to commemorate this event is our UCC board chairman, Mrs. Audrey Sewell. Please help me welcome Mrs. Sewell at this time with her presentation.
It is indeed my pleasure to bring special remarks to this inaugural memorial lecture in honor of Dr. Rickert Allen, and I thank both the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean and the National Commercial Bank for the invitation. I note with pleasure that the theme of the lecture is Transformational Leadership and Readiness for Change. It is a fitting theme, as the late Dr. Allen himself was a transformational leader who brought his extensive and pioneering research on transformational readiness in the workplace to bear on his 18 years of service at the National Commercial Bank in his capacity as Senior General Manager for the Group Human Resources and Facilities Division, as well as to his role as chairman of the board of the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean and his service as chairman of the Jamaica Institute of Financial Services Council, the training institute for the financial sector. I knew Dr. Allen in various capacities in the field of human resource management and development, and it was an honor for me to have served with this esteemed HR practitioner when he was the Jamaica Employers Federation representative on the board of the Heart Trust NTA, now the Heart Trust NSTA. Some of the concepts he shared with us then in terms of HR practices resonated well with the board members and were adopted within the strategic framework of the organization. He was a firm believer that HR should drive the business and should not only play a supporting role. It was my understanding that he introduced a new HR matrix at the NCB, and that contributed significantly to the success of the organization. Based on my knowledge during his tenure, Dr. Allen's driving motivation was to move the persons within the organizations that he served to achieve even greater goals and to find inspiration in new ideas and to find a bigger, brighter, and more inclusive vision of the future. In a newspaper article, he noted that, I quote, "In this ever-changing world, organization must not only explore best practices, but also next practices," end of quote. It was, in fact, a visionary statement, given the rapid changes that the society has undergone over the past year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Indeed, the pandemic has served as a catalyst for the reinvention of how we do business. The new arrangements have required the fast tracking of automation and digitalization in support of the new virtual work environment. Under these conditions, transformational leadership is required, perhaps now more than ever, to drive the necessary changes at the workplace with a view to improving strategies and business practices, as well as to change mindsets, behaviors, and values in order to achieve the objectives of our respective organizations, particularly during these challenging times. His passing has left a void in the field of HR in Jamaica and the region. I have had the honor of succeeding him as chairman of the board of the UCC. And from the beginning of my tenure, it was quite evident that his leadership has left an indelible mark on the university. Being a strong proponent of accountability, one notable system among others that he implemented at the university is a comprehensive evaluation of board members. We at the UCC have wholeheartedly committed to preserving his legacy and building on the work that he started. I salute Dr. Allen, his pioneering research, his masterful application of knowledge, as well as his years of service to both the financial and educational sectors. We can learn from Dr. Allen's legacy in this regard, and therefore, I welcome and applaud this timely lecture in his honor. I thank you.
Thank you so very much. That was Mrs. Audrey Sewell, the current board chairman of the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean. We want to thank you for those special remarks. Dr. Allen was certainly a transformational leader. And I suppose those who knew him will attest to that. And there are many chronicling of this leadership that he possesses. However, today, coming to give firsthand knowledge and I suppose an apt testimonial of the profile of the transformational leader will come from no other than Mr. Patrick Hilton, President and Group CEO of the National Commercial Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Mr. Patrick Hilton, who will now look at Dr. Rickert Allen, profile of a transformational leader.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor and privilege to bring remarks today at the UCC NCB Inaugural Memorial Lecture in honor of the late Dr. Rickert Allen, my colleague and my friend. The theme of today's function, Transformational Leadership and Readiness for Change, truly embodies who Rick was as a man, and so it is a fitting way to remember him. Rick graduated from the Mono School of Business and Management's DBA program in 2017 and received the distinction of High Commendation for his thesis, the title of which was, and I quote, "Towards the Development of a Model for Improving Employee Readiness for Corporate Transformation." He made history by being the only student to complete the DBA in the minimum accepted time of 5 years, as well as being the first student to receive High Commendation. Please allow me to share this abstract from his thesis to set the stage for my remarks today. And I quote from his thesis: "Several factors, including globalization, the rise of emerging markets, revolutionary advancements in technology, along with repercussions of global recessions, all combined to create high levels of uncertainty in the business environment. Consequently, organizational change has become increasingly important if businesses are to remain sustainable. Organizational change is an ongoing process, which by some account takes place in 3 distinct phases: developmental, transitional, and transformational. It is critical for organizations to understand this distinction, as each stage requires different strategies, different approaches, and processes. It is generally acknowledged that transformational change is the most complex of the 3, as it demands a quantum leap in strategy, structures, systems, processes, and culture if challenges are to be mitigated and business opportunities exploited. One of the elements of this type of environment is the individual's readiness for change, or specifically, readiness for corporate transformation. This study developed a specific definition for readiness for corporate transformation. Moreover, because successful transformational change requires that the vast majority of individuals within a firm demonstrate positive behavioral changes, it becomes imperative for the firm to create an enabling and facilitating environment. Rick's thesis and his work at NCB are testaments to his legacy of creating an enabling environment for employees to facilitate true corporate transformation. Long before corporate and digital transformation became buzzwords and imperatives for sustainability, Rick had been transforming NCB and along the way implemented many firsts in Jamaica and in the Caribbean. He established and empowered a technology work group within the HR division and outside of the IT division to redesign and automate processes using scalable open source applications to improve efficiencies and better serve our employees. This empowerment led to the development of a solution in one instance that facilitated same-day loan approvals for our employees, a process that previously would take a week or more. Today, that process takes even less time, with employees being able to get their approvals for personal and auto loans and their mortgages within an hour. The HR function leading the way in utilizing open source technology naturally led to some spirited internal debates. At the time, it was considered, particularly by those in IT, as disruptive and risky. Nevertheless, Rick pushed ahead because true transformation requires boldness and courage to move forward in spite of doubts and fears in order to get a better outcome, to get a better way of working and a better way of being. This was Rick. He was a proud man who disliked inefficiency and strived to make everything he was associated with world class. He was an engineer by training and spent the beginning of his career at Alcan, where he was exposed to first world ways of working and thinking. He often told me the story of witnessing a truck being operated completely remotely without a driver after many skeptics in Jamaica thought it was impossible. He found this experience instructive and was known for never considering any challenge to be impossible. In fact, he used to say the word impossible. When he split it in two, says, "I'm possible." This driverless truck experience, among others, were instrumental in shaping his passionate, relentless, and fearless pursuit of transformation that would enable NCB to eliminate efficiency and to become world-class. Under Rick's leadership, there are many other transformational activities implemented at NCB. I will share with you a few more examples. One, he transformed what had previously been referred to as a training school into the corporate university, registered by the University Council of Jamaica, placing NCB in the unique position of being the only company in Jamaica with an accredited corporate university. If you ever wanted to upset Rick, talk about the training school, because that to him was not transformational, right? It was no longer a school. It was a corporate university, a place of learning. Our virtual employee orientation process he reduced from 3 weeks to 1 day, right? In a matter of a couple of months of embracing new technologies, new methodologies, and so on to get it done. Our payroll and performance appraisal processes were automated, facilitating real-time and consistent delivery, as well as analytics to facilitate ongoing enhancements. He was given a number of reasons why the payroll process could not be fully automated. But as I said about the man, he ignored them he proceeded, and today it is the norm. After NCB formally embarked on its digital transformation journey in 2016, Rick was pivotal in the establishment of the NCB UII Digital Talent Lab. This partnership between NCB, the Mona School of Business and Management, and the UII Mona Department of Computing provided an internship program which introduced Agile business philosophy and real-life working experience in data analytics and software development to the nation's future technology professionals. Interestingly, this came out of a discussion I had with Rick at the time, when I said to him that I really wanted him to see how we could engage some of our people who are being developed in the schools, in the universities and so on, so as to get them to have real-life experiences, so that when they came into the working world, particularly as we moved into a digital environment, they would be better trained and better capable of making that transition. And the next thing I knew, the program was in place. Right? Later in his time at NCB, Rick also took on leadership of our group facilities and procurement unit, and under his leadership, we saw several changes. He introduced a program called ProCard, which improved the efficiency of high-volume, low-cost purchases, which previously had to go through the standard procedure. So what he did was to eliminate that whole procedure for standardized, repetitive transactions so as to make the process far more efficient and effective. He redesigned and renegotiated cash management arrangements, resulting in annual savings of almost $700 million. He oversaw the redesign of our branch facilities, including full-service branches, such as the one at Fairway in Montego Bay, which everybody admires, Constant Spring, and Mandeville, as well as our digital branches, a conversion for our branches to digital in some instances. The digital and virtual solutions launched under Rick's leadership all existed before the COVID-19 pandemic, with some going as far back as 2008 and 2009. So in a sense, he was ahead of his time. Much of NCB's readiness to transition to a fully remote working model outside of our branches was enabled by the solutions put in place under his leadership. That he was a transformational visionary in action and not just in thesis or in words is something that I don't think we can question. His legacy lives on today, and I'm grateful that his legacy has supported the resiliency of our organization during such a challenging time. He is dearly missed. On a personal note, I'll mention that Rick and I became friends in 2003 when I joined NCB. And he often used quotations, some of which resonated with me so much that I myself use them quite frequently today. And I'll share just a few of them with you. There are many. We could spend a long time here talking about them. One was, he would say, "Boss, this can only happen to me 3 times. First, last, and never again." So it meant it would only happen once. Another one he would say is, "Rule number 1, the boss is always right. Rule number 2, the boss is always right. Rule number 3, if you forget rule number 2, you go back to rule number 1. And then the third one, which is one which I really love and use quite a lot, is that I can't live in excuse and explanation land. Right? I need to get things done. I need to execute. Right? I can't constantly be explaining and giving excuses. So I'll tell you that we developed a close friendship, and so Rick and I spoke almost every day of the 17 years that we worked together, including a WhatsApp message that I got from him late the night before he died. My traveling or his traveling was never a constraint to our conversations. Almost all these conversations were about ideas, were about thoughts and initiatives to improve the conditions and the outcomes at work. He was always seeking to improve things and implement world-class standards in any endeavor or responsibility that he had. As I reflected on him, I remembered a particular quotation, and it says, and I quote, that all men dream, but not equally. Some go to bed at night and dream in the dusty recesses of their mind and awake to find that it was only vanity. But the dreamers of day are dangerous men, that they may act on their dreams and turn them into a reality. And that's what he did. Yeah? He was a dreamer of day, and then he executed. So Rick had many outstanding professional attributes. The one that impressed me the most, however, was his ability to execute initiatives efficiently, and perhaps most importantly, his reliability. If Rick told me that something was going to be done, I would consider it done, because I knew it would be done. His attitude really reflected a particular quotation that he knew I liked, which simply says, "Success requires no explanations. Failure permits no alibis." But he went beyond that. Many times I would discuss an idea or a concept with him, and the next thing I would know, it was implemented. We never discussed implementation. We never discussed the next stage, but it made sense. He went ahead, he implemented. And so Rick had a deep appreciation for the term VUCA, right? Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. The nature of the society in which we live. As such, he was not complacent with his status or existing achievements. He was a lifelong learner, and you'll notice that ultimately he pursued his PhD in the latter stages of his career, right? And creating history while doing so, importantly. He also had this special ability to walk among the kings and yet maintain the common touch. And this was reflected in the impact he had and the friendships he developed right across the entire socio-economic spectrum. He was proud of his ability to gather intelligence on the ground. He would tell me, the janitor told me this, or the janitor told me that. And I knew what that meant. Undoubtedly, many of his transformation ideas came as a result of him regularly visiting and talking to employees at different levels across the organization. He understood their mindsets, their pain points, and their aspirations. And this put him in a unique position to make the case for change and to inspire the adoption of change. While taking care to protect himself from the coronavirus, he continued to be on the front lines, supporting our essential workers until the time of his death. I remember when, we had developed this concept of openness prior to COVID-19, where we took down all the glass in front of the tellers, the plastic and so on, and had the open counter. And I said to Rick, we have to reverse it in the context of COVID, because, the risk, the danger, the social distancing and interaction and so on. And I remember this was a Friday, and the Sunday, Rick called me and told me that the plexiglass had gone up in most of the branches already. It was a conversation. This is Friday. And by Sunday, he had worked Saturday, he had worked Sunday, and he had completed most of the branches. That was the man. So, ladies and gentlemen, I say this. There are a few lessons we can take from Rick's transformational leadership. And I'll put them this way. One is to be bold and fearless in spite of doubts. Right? Nelson Mandela, I think, put it beautifully when he said that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. And Rick was the embodiment of that. Right? There are many times I know he was nervous, he was anxious, but he believed it was the right thing. And within that gave him sufficient push, right? Sufficient to have the courage to execute. 2, create the vision, but empower your team to execute it. Very important. Right? He did that. He built a world-class team around him, and that's why they were so successful in executing so many things. 3, as I mentioned before, keep your ears to the ground. Constantly talk to your people to identify pain points, but most importantly, to bring them along the transformation journey. 4, set high standards and limit your tolerance for excuses. As I said, we don't live in excuse and explanation land. And 5, as demonstrated by his journey of education and learning over his entire career, continuously seek to learn and to improve. Those are lessons which I think will be beneficial to anyone from my dear friend. And so in closing, ladies and gentlemen, I will say that Rick was a giant among men who dared greatly and led a life which was analogous to the famous quote by the celebrated American architect Daniel Burnham when he said, and I quote, "Make no little plans, they have no magic to stir men's blood, and perhaps themselves will not be realized. Make big plans, aim high in hope and work, remembering that a noble, logical diagram, once recorded, will never die, but long after we are gone, will be a living thing, asserting itself with ever-increasing insistency." End quote. And so, on behalf of my colleagues at NCB, I would like to reiterate my deepest appreciation to everyone joining today's lecture to celebrate and perhaps most importantly, to learn from the life and the legacy of Dr. Rickert George Allen. Thank you.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Rickert Allen, the profile of a transformational leader. And I told you about the testimonials earlier. And of course, Mr. Patrick Hilton outlined all of the credible evidence that will point us to the man as a transformational leader. Thank you so very much, Mr. Hilton, for sharing and for bringing those remarks at this time. We're also going to be listening now to another presentation. So we just heard from Mr. Hilton regarding Dr. Rickert Allen's life as a transformational leader. Coming to speak to us at this time is Dr. Noel Cowell, Senior Lecturer at the Mona School of Business. And the nature of his presentation will outline Dr. Allen the Scholar. Dr. Allen the Scholar. And so I want to invite at this time Dr. Noel Cowell to make his presentation. Go ahead, Dr. Cowell.
Good morning, everybody. I have 15 minutes, so I'm going to jump very, very quickly into the presentation. Thank you very much for inviting me. Nobody can say any better than Patrick Hilton, who says a lot of things very well. The kind of person that Rick Allen was. So I'm going to essentially stick to my lane here. And my lane is that it's the focus on the little I know about Rick as a scholar. Rick was my student. And obviously, you know why I like to say that. We like to associate ourselves with our distinguished students, regardless of how small a contribution we would have had on impact we would have had on their lives. And very often, some of these students have a very significant impact on our lives. Rick Allen was one of those kinds of persons. I think that the Mona School of Business, the people at Mona School of Business will tell you that he was a person who was larger than life. And at Mona School, he had a significant impact. He interacted with quite many of us at leadership level and others. And his impact was felt not only as a student, but he brought the same kind of transformational leadership to the Mona School that he would have brought to his job at National Commercial Bank and elsewhere before that. So Rick Allen, I wanted to focus on his work, on his magnum opus, so to speak, his latest, his last and most significant scholarly investment. And that was his PhD thesis. It was entitled Towards the development of a model for improving employee readiness for corporate transformation. And that title in itself signals what he intended to do. It signals also the connection that he made throughout his entire life, I think, as far as I can tell, having seen him, having taught him at master's level, and having had to interact with him while he was doing his doctoral thesis. He was sending a signal, and that essentially was that he saw the link between scholarship and practice. He was somebody who was very much into this matter of evidence-based decision making. He was a chief HR officer, one of the best in the Caribbean, who would have emerged out of a very unlikely place. He came out of engineering, went to the bauxite companies. I'm not sure what he went there to work as, but he ultimately ended up as an HR practitioner. In that regard, he was a unique individual because he presaged the developments that have taken place in HR, where HR has now departed very, very radically from what Dr. Allen used to refer to as touchy-feely HR, to HR which now relies heavily on technology and on data sciences. And as most of you would know, in his work at the National Commercial Bank, the current National Commercial Bank Group, he would have placed a considerable amount of emphasis on that, and that was the direction of his work. The nature of the people he employed were first class, and they came from very non-traditional categories. When you spoke to him on a one-to-one, he would make it clear that really doesn't matter what your background is when you come into HR. And it is not that he was discounting the importance of having knowledge of HR, but he was suggesting that to a very large degree, what was important was your education. If you're intelligent, you're highly trained, you could apply your discipline, certain disciplines for sure. The practice of HR and the way he practiced HR was highly driven by data. So that was his thesis, and his objective, as he laid it out, was essentially what he wanted to do was to try to build a roadmap. He wanted to give the people in organizations who were responsible for change leadership, he wanted to give them a roadmap which was grounded in scholarship that would provide them with a guide to corporate transformation, and that would enable business leaders to see the kind of transmission mechanisms between those variables that mattered for, in his case, organizational commitment, and how organizational commitment impacted on the outcome variable here, in his case, that is corporate transformation. Why did he want to do that? One of the things that Rick said in his thesis was that businesses, and he knew that because he was in the financial sector that was undergoing and continues to undergo significant disruption. He said businesses were faced, in order to survive, they were faced with the need from time to time to undertake corporate transformation. And what does he mean by that? Huge disruptive changes intended to transform their business model, to have a significant impact on the organization, not only in terms of changing little pieces of the organization, but in terms of transforming the entire business model. And he said that very often, these changes, these change initiatives were not successful. In fact, the data suggests that between 60 and 75% of these transformation initiatives, and it's not his data really, it is data that comes from the people who do these things. So large consulting firms like McKinsey, one of the firms that he employed, would tell you, and the scholarly literature would tell you, that transformation efforts failed. And they failed according to the scholars, the scholarship, and according to Rick in his studies. They failed because largely of employee resistance to change. And that notion of resistance to change is something that scholars have known about for almost 100 years. These ideas about resistance to change were being ventilated in scholarship from the 1950s. But it takes time for the knowledge to evolve to the point where people properly understood all of that. So Rick wanted to be a part of the solution to those kinds of issues. And so that, what did he do? Well, whenever anybody who is trying to do a PhD thesis has to go through certain processes. And those processes would involve, scouring the literature, getting deep into the literature, trying to understand what is currently known about the discipline that you're going to study. Having done that, your next concern is to try to find out what sort of gaps exist in the literature. Where is there something that needs to be addressed and that can be addressed by the collection of data and by going through by the utilization of scientific processes. And having done that, to develop some mechanism to collect data, analyze this data, and then to be able to look at the insights that can be provided by the data to solve the problem that you set out to solve. So that is basically the kind of process that one goes through and that Rick went through. And the interesting thing I should say about Rick, when Rick was a PhD student, I would attend his seminars. And one of the striking things about Rick and how he operated, I was amazed at his command of the literature, at the volume of material that he had read as he was grappling with the whole idea as to precisely how do I frame my questions? How do I connect it to theory? How do I avail myself of existing knowledge so I do not reinvent the wheel? Rick, quite frankly, was amazing in that regard. And that speaks to the kind of the character of the person that he was, because most people will tell you that Rick is not a shy, retiring person at all. He has a very high self-concept. To put it delicately, he's a very confident man. And he's not the kind of person who you would say shy and retiring. At the university, he was not like that at all, but he understood very well the boundaries. And he had a lot of respect for professional capabilities. And one of the things that Rick would say to people who was a part of his support group is that, look, this is your thing, you know this thing, tell me about it. I mean, he operated and he treated it the way in which a manager or a leader would treat those kinds. His PhD, his doctoral program, for him was another management problem, which is why it is not surprising that when he finished his PhD, he did it in the time that you would expect for it to be done. He met the deadline, perhaps one of the few. I don't know if anybody else has done it yet. I can't for sure. That finished within the time frame prescribed for a part-time student, and he got high commendation. High commendation is the highest accolade that the university grants to its students. So he was an extraordinary man, and so we saw in him as a doctoral student, a man who did not need to come to school. He was at the top of his game. He was highly intelligent. He was reading everything that there was to read in his discipline. He could hire anybody, any consulting firm, any person with any skill he wanted, but he felt that he needed to be a part of that process. He may have had other reasons, but that certainly was a key driver in what he did. And it was clearly manifested in the focus of his research and in the outcomes. Now I want to try to show you something about what his research looked like. And that involves sharing my screen, and I'm going to try to do that now, and you will tell me if you're seeing it. I hope you can edit this, Richard. Somewhat embarrassing. All right, So can you see on my screen then? What was, I want to show you what Rick's model was like. His outcome variable, what he was trying to do was to develop sufficient understanding and knowledge to support the efforts of himself in his own organization and people elsewhere to deal with this whole matter of corporate transformation. And he concluded from his extensive review of literature that this construct, organizational commitment, was a fundamental variable, a fundamental driver of readiness for corporate transformation. But he also discovered that there was this bundle of variables that emerged out of the work of a lot of people, but in particular some two scholars, Rafferty and Simon, who did some work in 2006, that drove organizational commitment. So what Rick was trying to explore was this bundle of variables here, 7 of them, that were divided into personal and organizational factors that would impact organizational commitment and ultimately readiness for corporate transformation. How did he do it? Well, he went into the field, collected data, massive amounts as a matter of fact. He collected about 400 and odd. Well, he targeted well over 800, got a response rate of about 50%, lucky for him. And 400 and odd, roughly 450 questionnaires were returned. He analyzed that data. These were employees he was targeting, getting data from employees to get the sense of how they felt about their organizations, to try to measure their trust in their organizational leadership, their trust in their peers, how they saw the matter of organizational support, what their view was on the logistics and support systems, including the human resource management system in the organization, and how they felt about themselves, their self-efficacy, the extent to which they were confident and optimistic about the prospects of transformational change in their organization. All of those things he collected data on, right across the Caribbean, 4 different countries, right, in the Caribbean financial sector. And he collected all of that data, used a sophisticated programming technique, analytic techniques on a structural equation modeling, and came to some really important conclusions. Now, I want to say in the last minute or so, last couple of minutes that I have, something about what his findings meant for the rest of us. So what kind of guidance did Rick offer to the rest of us, essentially in his, largely in his own words? What was his contribution? He made 4 recommendations for us. First of all, he spoke very, very strongly about the role of trust. The role of trust was critical. Now, some of us will say, of course, we knew that. And I get that all the time when I go into organizations trying to do empirical research. And when we come up with the data and the results, the HR director will say to you, well, we knew that. Well, why didn't you do anything about it? And do you know sufficient about it to be able to take action? So Rick, who knew probably more about HR and what were the drivers of organizational commitment and what were the factors underpinning trust than most people in the Caribbean, including academics who studied, went out and studied it. And his advice to us in his thesis was that trust in organizational leadership, well, not his advice, he said this was one of the findings, that trust in organizational leadership had the greatest impact on organizational commitment. And what that tells us, very simple, is that you have to work on building organizational commitment in your organization. And if you're working on building organizational commitment, then you have to make sure that your leadership is trusted. And that has many implications that is open to discussion. The second recommendation, look, he thought, and he located his view about change management and transformational leadership, the corporate transformation, beg your pardon, in a broad set of theoretical framework. known as social exchange theory. And he said that managers need to understand, I'm quoting him, that the commitment of the employee to the organization is driven by the perception of the employee about the level of commitment that the organization has to them as employees. In other words, if there was no support and they didn't see their organization as supporting them, then it is hard to expect them to be committed. He also suggested to us that based on the data that the results of his analysis, that it was critical, it was important to try to help the employee to build their own confidence about the efficacy of organizational transformation. Look, when something like that is happening, organizations are being disrupted and people sometimes are being dislocated. Employees feel insecure. How do you address that problem? Rick felt that that was a critical issue. It was supported. He might have had these views before, certainly was supported by his work. And the final thing was the question of importance of participation. Now, one of the things that Rick's data did not reveal that participation was a significant positive contributor to organizational commitment. That was what they call an unexpected finding in research, but he reported it anyway. We do that. You have to be honest with your data. What your data tells you is what you report. Even though his data told him that, he had his own sneaky suspicions about participation. One of the things that Rick suggested in towards the end of his work is that, look, many other scholars have found a different result from mine. And this is something that calls for explanation and discussion. And we should not throw it out. And he certainly was not prepared to throw out the idea of participation and decision-making merely because his data did not find it. Of course, obviously, we could say a lot more about Allen. Dr. Allen, I beg your pardon. But my time is up, and I really appreciate this, and I thank you very much.
That was Dr. Noel Cowell. Thank you for sharing the scholarly work and the scholarly life of Dr. Allen. Certainly, here's a man who, practiced what he was taught and what he studied, and he made sure that, the theory met and was aligned with the practical. So thank you so very much, Dr. Cowell, for sharing on the scholarly and the academic side of Dr. Allen. And certainly, I'm sure those of us who were not aware of some of those findings and the research that he conducted have certainly left feeling more enlightened about that. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome you again to our inaugural memorial lecture in honor of Dr. Rickert Allen. And at this time, we're going to move right into our interactive panel discussion. And we have an interesting conversation that we want to have at this time, under the topic pivoting in a global pandemic. And of course, we want to unearth and to deconstruct the role of the transformational leader in this kind of pivoting. Certainly the COVID-19 pandemic that we all have experienced have certainly taught all of us this word or the whole idea of resilience and pivoting. And so today we have asked a few persons to help us to just dig deeper into this idea of pivoting and the role of the transformational leader in this particular topic. And so I'm going to be asking at this time, we have Miss Sandra Gray, and Miss Sandra Gray is the Assistant Manager, Group Human Resource Division at the National Commercial Bank. We also have on our platform Mrs. Venice Facey, and she is the Managing Director of Body Contouring by Venposh. And we're going to be inviting them at this time to help us to deconstruct and to to have this conversation. Let me share with you, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit about our panelists today. Sandra Gray is a Fulbrighter who has extensive experience in human resource development, having worked for 20 years, over 20 years, sorry, in the financial services industry. She has a proven track record of delivery in core areas such as learning and organizational development, talent management, and employee relations. She has been instrumental in the creation and implementation of several key policy designed to shape the landscape of the NCB Group. Ms. Gray is a member of the Society for Human Resource Management, SHRM, and she holds a master's degree in human resource management from the Long Island University in New York, and a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Technology here in Kingston, Jamaica. Ms. Gray is an avid reader and has written several career booklets and career articles. She also enjoys interior decorating, traveling, and is currently developing her own blog. We also have today Venice Anderson-Facey, Mrs. Denise Anderson-Facey. She's the Managing Director of Body Contouring by Venposh and Global Director in the Total Life Changes. Venice has a 20-year banking experience or career. Her last role before she retired from banking in June 2020 was the relationship manager in corporate and commercial banking, helping large corporations with financing and investing. She was awarded the Top Relationship Manager of the Year in 2019 in garnering net deposit growth of over $2.4 billion and over $5 billion in corporate loans. Venice has been an entrepreneur for the past 8 years, running a body contouring spa and juggling a 9-to-5 as well as her business. In January 2020, however, Venice made a decision to engage in a vision bigger than herself so that nothing or no one would get in her way. And this is when she partnered with a health and wellness company in the USA called Total Life Changes and brought a franchise. Quickly, she made history in the company to become the first and only global director, 2 levels from the top of the company in the English-speaking Caribbean in the 20-year history of this company. She also achieved a Top Earner Award within 6 months. This is when Venice decided to become a full-time serial entrepreneur. She discovered her true passion and purpose, which is to coach women and men around the world to start their own businesses, grow their business, change their mindset, manifest the life they want by creating the vision for their life and breaking generational curses. She currently coaches a team of over 600 males and females worldwide, which includes Caribbean, Spanish and African European countries, and her goal is to help 1,000 families to earn 6 figures and experience real freedom. Of course, her mantra is, where there is no vision, the people will perish. Ladies, thank you for joining me this morning in this discussion. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Yes, certainly.
All right, beautiful. Thank you so very much for coming on and for joining the discussion. So I'm going to ask you each, just let me know and tell our viewers. And of course, we want to ask all our participants as you engage in this discussion and in this panel discussion right now. I am asking if you have any questions as you listen to the presentations. If you have questions, we invite you to just use the question and answer feature in the Zoom platform and just ask those questions. We will pose those questions to our panelists as soon as we are ready to move to that in that direction. So I'm going to ask you ladies, just if you could share with me, how have you and your business responded to the challenges in this pandemic? We know certainly the pandemic caught everyone off guard. Nobody anticipated that the lives of businesses and of course our own personal and social lives would change so drastically. So please, if you would share with us, how has your business responded to the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic? I'm going to ask Ms. Gray to go first, and then Mrs. Anderson-Facey could continue.
All right. Good morning. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you well.
All right. So I agree with you. No one could have anticipated the pandemic and what it would have brought on. But for the NCB group, I'd probably put my answer or frame my answer in three ways, or approach from a people, a process, and a technology perspective. So as it relates to people, one of the first things we did at the executive level was to form a COVID-19 task force. And based on the positioning of that task force, we were able to look at the impact of COVID from a business perspective, how it would impact our employees, our operations, etc., and discuss the ramifications and take quick action to position ourselves as things began to happen. We formed a communication subcommittee that became a single source for discussing topics with our staff and with public as well, so that there was no confusion in terms of the message we wanted relayed and the assurance of trust we wanted to give our employees. It became necessary too to undertake a mindset shift. Safety protocols, the wearing of protective gear is not something that we were used to, not at a national level and certainly not at the corporate level. And we had to begin an education process championed by Rick, in fact, in the initial stages to get our employees on board with the wearing of masks, gloves, sanitizing, etc. Then we looked at how do we keep our staff safe? And we began to ramp up activities and initiatives that would expand remote work. So currently we have, I think, 62% of our staff working remotely now. And there is not a day that we're not contemplating how we can increase that number safely without compromising on providing a satisfactory service experience for our customers. We looked at measures such as keeping customers and staff safe by installing sanitization stations, touchless bathrooms, putting COVID cleaning crews in all our locations, instituting mandatory temperature checks, erecting shields. Patrick Hilton spoke to that earlier in his presentation of his thoughts on Rick. And of course, in the event we had an occurrence of an employee contracting COVID, instituting deep cleaning arrangements so that the environment was safe. In terms of process, we looked at our operating procedures so that we could begin to minimize contact, face-to-face contact. Of course, again, maintaining an acceptable level of service, ramping up procurement so that we had a constant and steady stream of supplies at all times, daily communication to inform our teams of the new guidelines, curfew hours, what resources were available. And of course, with a remote environment, we had to look at procedures for ongoing employee interaction, tracking, measuring performance in a remote work environment. And I guess you would say the backbone of it all would be the technology. We put in place workflow processes, technology to enhance that. You're not working in a physical space anymore, but you have to have business continuity. So we had to look at tools that would facilitate online authorization, that would accommodate meetings and team discussions, and that would allow for that, although remote, similar personal contact between supervisors and teams, peer discussions, and so on. And you have to, of course, look at acquiring tools so that remote work can be successful. How can our employees be comfortable in a remote environment and give off their best? And I would think too, because temperature checks became necessary, we had to look at modern temperature checking methodologies in all our locations so that we don't impede the flow of our customer traffic, but at the same time, we have some assurances regarding safety. That was just a few of the things that we did.
All right, sounds like a mouthful. There are a lot of things you had to do to respond. And I'm sure agility and the quickness of the response was also a part of that process, correct?
You're quite right.
Because of course, it's a fluid environment and you have to always make sure that you respond quickly to the many changes that COVID-19 necessitated in our lives. Let me go now to our other panelist, Mrs. Venice Facey. If you could share the same question with us, answer that same question, how has your business responded to the challenges brought on by this awful pandemic?
Wow, thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much to the viewers for even tuning in to, just hear what it is that we have to speak about. So for me, there are certain things that I definitely had to implement, right? And if the pandemic didn't teach me anything else, it really taught me that change is not just constant, but change is also immediate. Change is also, it can be disruptive, you know what I mean? It can be like, it can really just cause a lot of different things happening, right? Now, for me, because I run two different businesses, what I had to quickly do was recognize that I now need to merge or marry these two businesses together. What I'm happy about though, is that my body contouring studio, because it has to do with health, it was so easy for me to now merge my health and wellness company with my body contouring, because let's face it, right? We're offering body contouring services, massage, facials. Not many people really cared about that during the pandemic because we were really in a lockdown. But guess what? People really cared about their health. People were at home, just sitting down, eating, going to the fridge, gaining a lot of weight. So people were now becoming health conscious. So when it is that I partnered with Total Life Changes and I started to promote and, advertise these products, I pretty much got a lot of interest because people are now looking into themselves to say, wow, this is a pandemic. Our immune systems are weak. We definitely need to, maintain our weight, not gaining weight. So there are certain things I had to change. So pretty much I had to merge because guess what? The services cut down. What do you think would have happened to my company if it is that I did not have a product? So this pandemic also taught me that not only should you really focus on a service, you also have to have a product because at any given time, the services can become null and void based on the situation. This pandemic is nothing that we planned for. This pandemic is nothing that we could have imagined how it would have turned out. So as a result, we had to become very innovative. So as it relates to the topic of transformational leadership, innovation, creativity, having a vision is also part of that. So for me, I had to quickly think about some new things that I could do, get my staff equipped as well, because at the end of the day, if staff isn't adapting to the changes that you're coming with and they're not in line and aligned with your vision, then at the end of the day, you're going to have a challenge because you alone cannot necessarily carry out the vision for your company, right? So at the end of the day, what we had to do, guys, is pretty much, get the staff together. At one point when the country had locked down and all my staff live in St. Catherine, y'all know how that went, right? Yes. So all my staff live in St. Catherine, and at that point, St. Catherine was on lockdown. So what I had to quickly do, thank God for products becoming a part of my business, I had to now develop a bearer service. So now a lot of people were reaching out for products, but because my staff was not there for us to open the institution, we now had to develop a bearer system. So quickly I had to adapt to something new. So now I had bearers delivering products all over. Thank God we still had things like Nutspot Express and that type of stuff. So we had to quickly make changes, become innovative, and because the market was totally disrupted.
Certainly. And of course, you operate a high touch environment. And at the time when we had entered the pandemic, of course, everybody was distancing themselves from everybody else. And you had to now pivot quickly into this new thrust and new business ideas and be innovative. All right, let me ask a question then. We speak about transformational leadership, and I know you had responded about how your business is responded in light of the pandemic. But I want to ask, what in your mind, or what are some of the qualities of a transformational leader in the context of our discussion today? What do you think a transformational leader necessarily looks like? Yes, go ahead.
In my mind, a transformational leader has to be a problem solver, right? You have to be able to delegate to people. You also have to be in a position where you can literally share your vision in a clear and concise way so that it can be carried out. Because at the end of the day, if the vision is not clear and concise, then your team isn't going to be in full alignment with you. I also believe that a transformational leader has to be very creative and be consistent in everything that they're doing as well. We also have to ensure that we pretty much adapt to change. So we have to be adaptable, right? Because like I said earlier, change is constant, change is immediate, right? So I look at collaboration, I look at things like being adaptable, I look at team building, I look at being a visionary, I look at being a real leader where somebody would want to do what you are doing. I also believe that transformational leaders should definitely be, apart from being a vision carrier, you also should try to develop other transformational leaders. So we're looking at succession planning, right? We're looking at sharing knowledge. We're looking at strategic planning. We're looking at emotional intelligence. So the reality is this pandemic would have taught a lot of us emotional intelligence, right? Because that's pretty important, because at this point in time, so many people are in their feelings about, different things. So we have to definitely ensure that, that is a part of it. So for me, that's pretty much, in a nutshell, what I believe a transformational leader should possess, those qualities.
Okay, thank you. And Ms.
I
Gray?
agree with Venice. Those were very good points. I would add, a transformational leader must inspire trust, because with the pandemic, you have to make quick shifts. And if the employee trusts you, they will move with you as quickly as you want them to.
Yes.
You have to be a bold person. Some of the decisions that you have to take will not be popular, will seem risky, will seem almost completely left field, but you have to be bold enough to push through with it, and push through also to put in place the infrastructure to support those decisions that you're taking. A transformational leader has to be able to walk that talk. So you're at a particular level, yes, but you're able to relate right across your organization. You understand your team, you understand what they're feeling, what it is they're going through, and you're able to craft your vision in a way that they identify with it and they can see themselves in it as well. They can see success happening through what it is you have said. Very important. You have to be empathetic, and you have to be consistent in how you handle situations. You have to be transparent in the decisions that you make. You have to be credible as well. Authentic, I think, would be a better word to choose at this point. And you have to be a relatable person. At the end of the day, relatable. You can have as many strategies as you can craft, because innovation and creativity go with being transformational, but you have to be relatable so that you can convert that big strategy that you have into a breakdown of activities that your team can relate to and can implement successfully.
Beautifully said there. So you have to be relatable, you have to communicate the vision that you want for the organization to those who you lead, you're saying here. Let me go back to Mrs. Facey. So you operate a small business enterprise. So I know that many small businesses, have reported that they have perhaps been negatively impacted, severely impacted by the pandemic as a result of course, of resource limitations and the various challenges that come along with that. How do you think, I'm speaking now from a small business perspective, what's your advice to small businesses to successfully compete in these challenging times? I know you spoke about the agility and the adaptability, but I wanted to speak to the small man, the micro and small entrepreneur, and in terms of how they can compete in these challenging times.
All right, very good question. So for me, to really pivot through a time like this, there's three things that I believe is very important to the average business person right now really being successful during this time. And those three things are structure, right? So a lot of company, they're operating, but they're really not operating with any form of structure. And sometimes that is why your team or your staff isn't really in alignment with what you're doing, because there's really absolutely no structure. It's like anything goes. And in a time like this, anything cannot go. As it relates to direction, that's my other point. The company or the business definitely needs direction. But at the end of the day, if the staff or your team does not see the direction that the company is going in, which is why I spoke about having a vision and sharing the vision clearly, then at the end of the day, the company will not go into any direction. Let's talk about strategies. It's the same thing. So that's my third point, strategies. Companies now need strategies. Like I said to you, I had to think quickly. I had to come up with solutions. Then I decided to tap into coaching because I'm saying, okay, no, I found an opportunity. There are many people out there who are probably very depressed and stressed, and mental health is really rampant. So I thought of a strategy to say, let me coach other young people, whether you're already in business or you're thinking of getting into business. I'm going to teach them the ropes, what I did, all the mistakes I made, all the successes I had, what I did, all the steps. So it's pretty much a blueprint, which is why now I'm coaching a lot of people all over the world. And even though it is tied with my health and wellness business, there's also an opportunity side to it. So let's talk about the business people who are struggling right now. What have you changed since the pandemic hit? We can't sit and play dead. At the end of the day, no, we have to think about how can we now take our business on the digital platform? Because let's be real, everybody is at home. Even if you work in a 9-to-5 position, you are at home because most people are working from home. So how are you planning to take your business digital? Everybody's shopping online. So you either need to now create an Instagram page if you didn't have one before, create a Facebook page, because the truth is that's where the world is. That's where the business is. For me, I don't necessarily just have people walking in because my store is in a prominent plaza. It is because of the work that I've done on social media. And I had to pretty much ramp up that since the pandemic, because that's where everybody is shopping, right? Which is why I went to the point of saying to you that I had to now implement the bearer service, because people are seeing what I'm doing, because I show it on Instagram, because that's my platform to work. And then when I get the orders, I now have to get the bearer to go and do the deliveries. But if I was there sitting down waiting on this pandemic to clear up and say, okay, my store can't open, my staff is locked away in St. Catherine, what do I do? What I did, I went straight to social media, and I now became a staple on social media. That's where I show up for work every single day. And as a result, I was now being seen by people all over the world. So a lot of us in business, we just sit and we're playing dead and we're just sticking to what we always knew. At this point in time, we have to now implement changes in our business.
All right, thank you so very much. And I'm gonna come back to you, but let me just ask my friend, Miss Sandra Gray, now this question. So there's a concept here that large organizations can be compared to big ships, right? Slow and incapable of a rapid change. Yeah? They're always slow to change. That's perhaps a stereotypical notion of big companies. How has NCB been able to be agile? You spoke about agility and responding quickly. How has NCB been able to be agile in these changing times? And in terms of transformational leadership, how does technology fit into the agility of it all?
We've been able to be agile. So you've asked me two things. How have we been able to be agile? And you've asked me, how have we leveraged technology?
Yes.
So technology for us is an enabler. It's an enabler of all that we do. So you would find that a lot of our activities have gone digital, and we're pushing digital now as a methodology to keep contact with our customers and minimize face-to-face contact, etc., and using digital channels. We've used technology to help us to get that done. We've used technology in our work processes as well to make them more efficient and to eliminate some of the steps that would have been manual in activities. But in terms of agility, it comes from building change readiness. We have been speaking on it all morning, and I think NCB embodies it. We have been in transformation mode for quite a number of years. And what we have done is build on each level of transformation that has taken place. So we have focused a lot on training and developing our staff in the agile way of working. That is one. We use some of the agile philosophy in the labs that we have that help us to bring products to market far more quickly and aids in our agility in decision making. And we also work a lot at process reviews. I guess you would call that business process re-engineering. We look at the risks associated with an entire process for work. And based on that level of risk, we can remove some of the steps. We have removed some of the steps, I should say. And it has helped us to speed up both decision making and the interaction that we have with customers. So Mr. Hilton this morning spoke on turning around staff loans within, bringing it down to an hour. We've also looked at, from a customer loan perspective, how is it that we can eliminate some of the decision-making steps for a customer so that that request you've made of us, we can turn it around much quicker. If you look now at the use of data and how we mine data, we've used that to help us in the decision-making and agility process too, because by studying the trends, we're able to predict what it is our customers would want, and we're able also to offer solutions that the customers have not yet thought that they need. That has helped us a lot in turning the so-called big ship in the ocean pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you. Just a follow-up question. Do you think there is a place for a transformational leader or transformational leadership to be reflective? I mean, many times we think that the ideas that we have are the optimal one or the best ideas, but is there a place for reflection for us to see what works and what doesn't work? Certainly, even as we try to pivot, I'm sure there are ideas that were thrown out, that were given, that probably worked for some and didn't work for others. What is important in your mind of reflection in the life of a transformational leader?
It's actually a characteristic of a transformational leader. To build trust, you have to make yourself vulnerable. And making yourself vulnerable doesn't say you're incompetent. What it says is, I'm raising my hand as a leader. I do not have all the answers. So this is the situation that presents itself to us. As a team, what can we do?
Yes.
So to answer you, yes, there is much room for reflection. In the Agile philosophy too, which we practice here, one of the things you want to do if you're failing is fail fast and fail early. and you can reflect on what is not going right and then remove yourself from that situation pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you. Very good response there. I just want to remind our participants that we are, you can feel free to ask your questions. We will get those questions to our panelists as we continue the discussion. So make sure you use the Q&A feature on the Zoom platform, and we will certainly have the panelists answer your questions. So I'm going to go now to Mrs. Spacey. Question for you, and I know the same idea about technology. Very few small businesses have a significant digital footprint. Do you believe that there is a reservation in adopting technology in the small business space? And what's your recommendation to small business owners to either get training or to ramp up that kind of digital footprint that they have in the market space?
Right. Yes. So my you see, based on my experience, even though I was always, on social media, even before the pandemic, I pretty much had to ramp up and step up my game as it relates to really going digital with my business. So I really want to encourage small businesses out there to really look into it, because at the end of the day, what are you going to do? Are you going to just lay and play dead? Because in some instances, some companies are going to become obsolete. At some point in time, we're no longer going to need the brick and mortars. If you even look right across the world, there are several large companies, large clothing stores that close down. And I'm saying, if we as a small business here don't see that and take heed, because they're all going on websites now, why wouldn't we want to know? Look at how we can position our business on the net, on the internet, because as I said to you earlier, that's where everybody is. Now, the truth is, it's not very easy for persons to adopt, especially if you're an old-fashioned person and you were never ever a technologically savvy person. But guess what? There's always training out there. So I'm really encouraging persons out there who have businesses to go and get the training that you need, get your staff the training as well, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be in a position where your business gets shut down and you blame everything else but yourself, or blame everyone else but yourself. Now, also, let's talk about building trust, right? So I know Sandra mentioned it earlier, and I honestly believe that that plays a very big role in transformational leadership and in business, because at the end of the day, if your staff or your team does not trust you, then they're going to leave, even though there is a pandemic and even though there's job shortages or so. People want to feel like they are part of something that is growing, that is moving, right? Because success loves speed. So at the end of the day, I wouldn't want to associate myself with a company that I don't see growing, because at any given time, you can come and say to me, I no longer need you, the company is going to close down. So for me, I believe that being creative, being innovative is going to play a very, very important and crucial role in companies succeeding this pandemic situation that we're having. So obviously, I am really and truly recommending that persons go digital. I know that NCB does a lot of things to show people and empower and enlighten people, because the truth is, a lot of people just don't know. But NCB is playing such a major role in getting the word out there. And I'm not even promoting NCB, but it's true, because I'm seeing it for myself. Sandra is right. I'm seeing it for myself, right? We have conferences going on that says, let's go digital. I remember PSOJ did one recently in collaboration with NCB, and I'm saying people just really need to tap in. We have to understand that we put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into starting a business. Why should you just allow a pandemic to tear it down when there are opportunities out there for you to sustain your business?
Okay, thank you. So your key takeaway here is that technology is what's going to help us to pivot easily and to meet people, especially in this space. Let me ask Miss Gray from NCB. Dr. Allen was very much heavily involved in human resource development and management. And I want to ask, in light of what's happening in our society, in our world where the pandemic is concerned, what do you think is the role of the employees rather, and of course their own well-being and their own wellness at this point in carrying out some of the functions that we want them to carry out in this time. I suppose there's additional demands on them because personally, as well as trying to wade through the professional environment. How important is the well-being of our employees, and what has NCB done in terms of the landscape of transformational leadership to ensure that employees are a part of this pivoting that is necessary?
So if I hear you clearly, you're asking me about the role NCB has played in ensuring employee well-being. That is one thing, yes. And then two, how important is well-being in the whole landscape of pivoting?
Pivoting,
yes.
Correct.
Yes. All right. What we have done as it relates to well-being, we were fortunate enough to have in place a support policy for employees well in advance of the pandemic. And we simply have been enacting it. What the support policy has in it as its contents is a raft of counselors that can support an employee through a mental health challenge, working remotely, and the disconnect from daily interaction with your peers can create different feelings, sometimes withdrawal, sometimes loneliness, and an employee has to have support to work through that. So we have systems in place that manage that. We have, as a part of our remote work framework, regular check-ins that supervisors have to have with their line personnel. And they, in that interaction can sometimes pick up things that they would refer to the group HR division for us to provide additional support for it. There are counseling systems in place, and to date, I would say it has been effective in keeping staff on point and providing help when it is necessary. Now, how important is well-being in pivoting? And also from the perspective, I just remembered something, from the perspective too of organizational health, we have a robust internal framework which pairs a concentration on financial performance with a concentration on employee well-being. So as we come up with a business strategy, we think about strategies that can help employees succeed in that business strategy as well. And that has also helped us in concentrating on staff well-being. How important is it now for an employee to be able to concentrate, think clearly through situations? I would say critical. You can't pivot if you're weighed down by personal or professional issues.
Indeed.
You can't give off your best if you are distracted by what is happening in the environment. So it makes no sound business sense to press ahead with a strategy if you don't first pay attention to the issues that affect the staff. So I would say to any employer, it is prudent to concentrate on making sure your employee feels your support, knows the avenues that he or she can pursue to get support, and understands what is necessary to emerge from whatever the crisis is that they were in. Once they're aware of that and they can tap into it, they are able to give off that discretionary effort that will take your company through this pandemic and any other crisis that we face nationally or at a company level.
Very good, very good, very good. So we see the importance of the well-being of the staff. And of course, the transformational leader has to consider that, because the staff now becomes very pivotal and important in the process of changing and adapting. Lady Facey, let me ask you now, as we move forward, how do you see the landscape, the entrepreneurial landscape post-pandemic? The transformational leader has to be forward thinking as well. So how do you see this, the entrepreneurial landscape post-pandemic, and what, some of the things that the opportunities that COVID-19 has taught us? how can we make those opportunities sustainable going forward?
Right. So for me, I simply believe that, you know, once you once you manage to go through with this pandemic, right? After, especially if you did not have to go through a close down, after you should be stronger, right? Because at the end of the day, this pandemic has never been seen before. The things that we had to go through to business, and let me just, you know, give you a little backstory to what I'm saying. Now, for my staff, we understand that the services that I offer are not what we consider, you know, needs. They're not needs per se, they're really wants, right? But the truth is, I did not even have to send home one staff. I did not even have to cut one staff salary. No, for me, that's major, because a lot of companies are closing down, and if not closing down, they're cutting staff. If not cutting staff, they're cutting pay. So like when I hear my staff look at me and say, boy, boss, I am so appreciative of the fact that you didn't send us home, because you could have, especially given that I've pretty much moved the business from the services in the heat of the pandemic to now focusing on products. I probably didn't really need all of them, but I thought about mental health. I thought about their family. I thought about the fact that they didn't bring this pandemic on themselves. I didn't bring it on me either. But if I can afford to still keep them while getting them very involved in other things for the company, right? Like marketing, everything, then for me, I believe it is only fair for me to keep them, keep the same salary and everything. Now, coming out of this pandemic, I would have built some trust in my staff, correct? So at the end of the day, my staff should really see the vision brighter now and really want to take the company to the next level. While it is that we're not sure when this pandemic is going to be over, at the end of the day, I still believe that we are going to get a relief at some point in time, right? So for other businesses out there, my encouragement is, as I said earlier, you just have to step up your game. You now have to really take your business digital. You can no longer sit and wait on somebody to walk into your establishment, somebody to take up the phone and call you. You now have to start going after these people. For me, I am going for my customers, right? Because I need something from them and they need something from me. But if I just sit down and just wait on somebody to step into my establishment, that may never happen. So I am now searching for my clients, right? So the long and short of what I'm really saying is that businesses just need to understand, especially small businesses who are struggling right now, you just need to understand that this is a new season. This is new time that we're living in, right? And we just have to adapt to the changes, and we have to become innovative people and creative people if we really believe in our business and our vision, and if we really want to help these people that are working for us. Because at the end of the day, you closing down does not benefit the people that worked with you, right? Now you're putting them in a position where they now have to either go look another job, or they're now just sitting down, not knowing what to do with themselves. And the truth is, businesses right now have a lot of potential, but they don't know, because they don't have any strategies. They don't have any direction. They're not going out there and putting themselves out there. So positioning in this time is going to be very critical, how you position yourself and your business. Yes.
Very good. They have to be strategic and position the company and position yourself as a leader for the changes.
As the leader.
One thing COVID-19 has certainly taught us is that perhaps this is not the last we're going to see of a COVID-19-esque situation. So we always have to be prepared and learn to be resilient and pivot. As we wind down this discussion, I want to ask you to remember to put your questions in the question and answer forum. But I'm going to bring this to a close for the panelists in a little bit. But question for Miss Sandra Gray, just you could highlight in a very succinct way for me 3 main points or 3 key learning, reflective areas that you have gained from your experiences of pivoting in this global pandemic. Just 3 takeaways for the audience to remember about pivoting in the global pandemic. Miss Gray.
Okay, I would say don't become fixated on what is working now or what worked in the past. You have to reimagine your business, because the landscape it's uncharted territory, and what works now or worked before may not work in this uncharted territory. So don't be fixated, be open to reimagining your business. Don't fear disruption, because opportunities lie in disruption. You just have to bravely seek them out and go after them. And I would also say authentic leadership is very important to the process. We must strive to be authentic leaders.
All right, strive to be authentic. Beautiful point there. And over to you, Mrs. Facey. 3 takeaways from your experience amidst the pandemic of how to pivot successfully.
All right, so, 3 things that really stand out for me is that we have to become risk takers, greater risk takers, right? Some of us, we really make fear cause us to not tap into certain opportunities that are out there for us. And the truth is, you will not know what a particular opportunity can do for you until you really take a chance, right? So I'm really just encouraging persons, take a chance on yourself, take some risk sometimes. Yes, the risk may be calculated, but you have to still take it. I'm also suggesting that personal development is very, very critical in each of us' life. It doesn't matter whether you're the transformational leader, you're the staff, you're the teammate, whatever you are. I strongly believe in personal development. I also believe in emotional intelligence because, while I mentioned it earlier, I have to still speak about it, that in a lot of companies, the visionaries, the leaders, the managers, they really don't have emotional intelligence, and that too can cause rupture in the companies, on a whole.
Okay, thank you. I remember now, members of the audience, you're invited now to ask your questions. I have 2 questions that have been fielded to me by members of the audience, and any of you can respond. And I suppose it's a general question that I think both of you perhaps could respond to. And this is a question that is asking, what support mechanism do you think is important for the transformational leader to have as they go along this journey? Especially in the small business environment, what are the support mechanisms that you think are important as you go through this journey as a transformational leader?
All right. So for me, I believe that, trust plays a very important role, and we have spoken about it before. So, as transformational leaders, we definitely need our people to have trust in us. That will also help to push us in terms of, the support that we need. And I believe as transformational leaders, we also really have to just continue to empower the people, really and truly just bring people up, right? At the end of the day, you need help. As a visionary, you can't do everything by yourself. So you're gonna definitely need the support of your people, and the people are gonna need your support as well.
All right, so you need the trust and the support of your team. Lady Sandra.
I would say, I take Venice's point and I agree. I would say to recognize when you don't have all the answers. So there are some things that you do well as a company, but someone does it better. Don't be afraid to leverage a partnership to get that expertise to bring your business through. As a person, as a transformational leader too, you have to take care of personal wellness. So you need to invest time in yourself for downtime, personal downtime. You need to read widely. You need to tap into more information that speaks to reimagining. So if I get up every day and I read HR, Harvard Business Review on one topic, my focus may become linear on that topic. But reading widely brings more perspectives that you can leverage in uncharted territory. So I would say seek help for things you are not all that versed on, and leverage it. And I would also say pay attention to self. You're a whole being. You're not just a leader with persons that you're responsible for or business strategies that you're making. You're a whole person, and your investment in yourself will redound to the success of your business.
All right, lovely. Thank you. Another question coming from the audience, and I'm going to throw this question out to you, Miss Sandra Gray, because I think I had asked a similar question to Mrs. Spacey earlier. The audience, a member of the audience wants to know, what is your vision of the future of work post-pandemic, specifically the convergence of people and technology? And then another question, a part B to that, I suppose, what role or what are the roles you see emerging in the HR field as a result of this future of work?
I'm sorry, I forgot I was on mute. All right. The future of work post-pandemic will, in my opinion, actually be a blend. Significantly more will be remote than it will be staying physically in office. I think as we go through this pandemic, the appetite for remote work is increasing, and people are beginning to recognize the flexibility that it offers. So post-pandemic, we will definitely see the future of work being not necessarily a 9 to 5. It can be just a focus on getting the deliverables done. If you're accountable for X, you can deliver X at whatever time that your company finds it to be suitable. Doesn't necessarily have to be a 9 to 5. And the future in HR, it's much more focused on talent development and analytics. Those two roles will play a significant part in describing and defining the landscape as we go forward. I've focused on talent management because in addition to HR, so you'd have chief talent spotters, if that is a term I can use, and you'll have persons who are concentrating on better defining and predicting what the competencies of the business will require are. Analytics now I see as a very key role because a lot of things are affected by the type of worker you have. A lot of decisions that you make are impacted by the stratification of your workforce. And if we do not pay attention to those variables, you're not informing strategy as well as you could for your business. You are not able to speak to the age of your workforce. I'm just picking one or two of the things that you would look at. You're not able to define the profile of your workforce if you're not investing enough in workforce analytics. You are not able to say, when you look at the competencies of your organization, where your pockets of cognitive surplus are that you can leverage within the business. How will you project and define who your successors are? So I think those two roles, there I'm sure will be others, but I focused on those because I cannot see an HR function succeeding in the future without a talent developer, a chief talent strategist, or an analytical type role being present.
Thank you so very much. Very solid responses from both my panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, if there are no further questions, I'm not sure. I'm not seeing any other questions from the members of the audience. But certainly, I want to take the opportunity to thank both of you ladies for coming on and joining me in this discussion about pivoting in the global pandemic, the role of the transformational or the role of transformational leadership. Certainly, some of the key takeaways from the discussion this morning, going into the afternoon, is that we need to be agile, we need to be adaptable, we need to embrace the technology, as my friend Lady Facey reminds the entrepreneurs all over that they need to embrace the technology. And of course, the technology, as Miss Gray reminded us, is what's going to allow us to pivot and to be agile and to be adaptable, because the technology is here to stay and we might as well embrace it. But certainly too, that we also learn that the transformational leader needs to look for strategic opportunities in the midst of the pandemic. Yes, out of the pandemic has come so many opportunities for businesses and business leaders to galvanize and to exploit. And certainly, based on the conversation we had earlier with our two guests, certainly we see the value in exploiting those opportunities so that your businesses can remain afloat. Because certainly there are, as much as we are hearing the success stories today, there are stories that are not as successful because perhaps those leaders were not able to pivot effectively amidst this global pandemic. So leadership is all about pivoting and being resilient and being agile. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for engaging with your questions in this panel discussion. And certainly we want to thank both our panelists, Ms. Sandra Gray, Assistant General Manager at the National Commercial Bank, and Mrs. Venice Facey, Managing Director of Body Contouring by Venposh, for joining us. And of course, on behalf of the planning committee of this memorial lecture, and of course the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, and in partnership with NCB, we want to thank you so very much for your contribution to the discussion. And certainly we want to ensure that we give you in a tangible way our tokens of appreciation, and we're going to do so post this event. Yes, we're not able to do a virtual handing over, but certainly post this event, we will ensure that you are receive your tokens for your kind contributions today. Thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, as we wind down on our program here in this inaugural memorial lecture in honor of Dr. Rickert Allen, we're going to be inviting at this time Dr. Donald Rooms, UCC board member, who will be reading a citation to Dr. Rickert Allen.
All hail Dr. Rickert Allen, outstanding and remarkable leader. Leader, trailblazer, scholar, Dr. Rickert Allen was not only a visionary, but also took action to make his vision a reality. Serving with distinction first as a member of the board of the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean from September 2017 to May 2019, and then as chairman until his untimely passing in April 2020. He epitomized effective governance, helping the UCC to move forward in what he described as volatile, uncertain, confusing, and ambiguous times. He brought his tremendous competencies in organizational diagnostics and workforce analytics to bear in driving the university forward for success, guiding the institution to national and international accreditation while adding value to the academic achievements of UCC graduates. Dr. Rickert Allen believed that the quality of a nation's manpower resources is key to its development and competitiveness, and dedicated his life to paying it forward through community service and mentorship. He was a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Development and a number of other organizations and their stakeholders benefited greatly from his active membership, among them including the Private Sector of Jamaica Education Committee, the University of the West Indies Mentorship Program, the Society for Human Resource Management, the Human Capital Institute, the Heart Institute of the Caribbean, and the Jamaica Employers Federation. Dr. Rickert Allen was a man of integrity, ambition, courage, and honesty, loved and held in high esteem by his peers, colleagues, and all who had the good fortune to know him. He was exalted for his seminal work in the field of change management, which was explored through the lens of corporate restructuring in the Caribbean, and which formed the core of his highly commended DBA thesis entitled Towards the Development of a Model for Improving Employee Readiness for Corporate Transformation. This landmark publication, which was influenced by his firsthand observation of the restructuring process in the bauxite, alumina, and financial services industries, allowed for the systematic analysis of approaches adopted over time to the process of downsizing, the difficulties that ensued, and the consequent low rate of success in this area within the Jamaican context. His acumen for independent thought and rigorous intellect allowed him to fearlessly engage in transformative decision-making. Dr. Allen joined NCB in 2002, a time when his division needed to be reimagined and restructured. Yet, ever the compassionate leader, he was able to keep his team cohesive and committed while engendering enterprise buy-in and compliance, despite the tough decisions that had to be made. Although he was genuinely interested in the growth and impact of the individual within the corporate space, he was of the firm belief that the wisdom of the team would always supersede the wisdom of the individual. It was this inherent but evident belief that made him inspiring yet approachable everywhere he went. Not only was he distinguished by his exemplary contribution within the corporate realm, marked by his 18-year tenure as Senior General Manager for the Group Human Resources and Facilities Division of NCB, he relished sharing his expertise with corporate aspirants, and as an adjunct lecturer in the MBA program at the Mona School of Business, he helped to design and deliver the Strategic Human Management course. A native of the Garden Parish in 2018, Dr. Rickert Allen was named as an honoree by the St. Anne's Homecoming and Heritage Foundation for his hard work and academic accomplishments. So even as he rose to the pinnacle of his career, he remained a dedicated family man, an avid reader, truly a gentle giant.
Truly a gentle giant. I'm not sure if you're able to see the citation on your screen, but certainly we want to thank Dr. Donald Rooms for reading the citation that will certainly, after this event, be presented to the family of Dr. Rickert Allen. Coming now to do an acknowledgement on behalf of the Allen family is Mr. Christopher Allen, son of Dr. Rickert Allen.
Good afternoon. My name is Christopher Allen, son of the late Dr. Rickert Allen. And on behalf of my family and I, we would like to express our gratitude and appreciation to everyone in attendance today, whether physically or virtually. We would also like to extend special thanks to the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean and the National Commercial Bank and their respective leaders for arranging this enlightening lecture and scholarship in honor of his name. I know that if my dad was here, he would be so proud of his accomplishments and the impact his legacy has on others. As I reflect on the title of today's lecture, Transformational Leadership and Readiness for Change, and all that was shared, it immediately brought to mind a famous quote of his: "The day we cease to respond to change is the day we die." Therefore, it was not surprising that at 58, when Dad started his PhD journey, I remember asking him, why did he want to go back to school? His reasons were, he always wanted to have a doctor title to his name, but most importantly, he wanted to give back to his country. And having a PhD exposes one to more opportunities, as this was evident based on the number of boards, organizations, focus groups he was a member of or involved with. He's a firm believer in sharing whatever knowledge he had for the development of persons on an individual basis or for the upliftment of our country. Not only was my father a great leader, mentor, and friend, he was also a great family man. Irrespective of whatever activity he was engaged in, family was always first. He was a strong believer in the value of having a solid education, which today we all have witnessed the results of his hard work. Sadly, 3 important people are not here to witness this momentous occasion, and they are my brothers Mark and Dale and my grandmother, Mrs. Adassa Steer, who have all preceded my father in death. I know they too will be as proud as we all are on my dad's achievements. In closing, I'm reminded of a quote by singer and actress Dolly Parton. "If your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, learn more, or do more and become more, then you're an excellent leader." My dad truly left his mark in this world, and I am reminded of this whenever I encounter people from all walks of life who knew him and interacted with him. Again, to the UCC, NCB, and all those in attendance, on behalf of my family and I, thank you and have a blessed day.
Thank you. Thank you. So that was Mr. Christopher Allen, son of Dr. Rickert Allen, providing there the acknowledgement of this wonderful lecture and ceremony on behalf of the family, the father, the husband, the man, Dr. Rickert Allen. And I'm very pleased this afternoon in my role as the Director of Student Affairs here at UCC to, at this time, bring to the attention of all our students listening and watching, our faculty members, members of staff, and everyone just looking on, that the NCB Foundation has extended a scholarship to benefit one of our students here at the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, to support one of our Jamaican students who will pursue a bachelor's degree in innovation and entrepreneurship, or to pursue a bachelor's degree in networking with cybersecurity program here at the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean. Certainly this scholarship, which will now form a part of our scholarship directory, is of course in honor of Dr. Allen, valuing $600,000 to a student who will pursue studies at the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean. Beginning, of course, in summer 2021, from as early as summer 2021, a student can benefit from that scholarship. Of course, the delivery mode, 100% or online or blended, yes. Of course, all protocols and COVID, allowing us to, we will certainly go back to face-to-face at some point, but certainly for now, our classes are online, 100% online, so the scholarship will be redeemable at that point. So ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank on behalf of the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean. Of course, we just in the photo that was shown just now, we had Dr. Yvonne Dawkins, the Associate Vice President in charge of Academic and Student Affairs, receiving the scholarship on behalf of UCC, and the scholarship was of course presented by President and Group CEO of the National Commercial Bank, Mr. Patrick Hilton. And I just want to echo the sentiments of Dr. Dawkins in expressing our appreciation to the National Commercial Bank Foundation for honoring the life of Dr. Allen in this way, and of course, certainly for providing opportunities for other transformational leaders to get their degree here at UCC, and of course, to benefit from this scholarship. So I want to thank you again on behalf of the students and the faculty and the team from the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean. We wish to express our gratitude to the National Commercial Bank Foundation for this kind gesture on behalf or in honor of the life of Dr. Rickert Allen. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a wonderful feast of information and knowledge and discussion here in the UCC NCB Inaugural Memorial Lecture in honor of Dr. Rickert Allen. Certainly, we learned more about Dr. Allen, his profile as a transformational leader, his profile as a scholar. We also benefited from a robust discussion about pivoting in a global pandemic, the role of the transformational leader. And so certainly we want to thank all of you who have stayed and who have joined us today in this function, and thank you for joining us and for staying with us throughout. Certainly, we want to also thank the hardworking team from the research committee for putting together this memorial function in honor of Dr. Allen. Certainly, the efforts will not go unnoticed. And of course, the team was joined by members of the National Commercial Bank as well, who also joined us in our planning meetings and ensured that today's function was a success. So certainly we want to thank the members of that team, of the research committee, as well as members of the National Commercial Bank who joined that committee for putting together this function. Certainly thankful also for the management and the executive board of the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, and of course the management of the National Commercial Bank for allowing us to have this function for a man well fitting for the honor that was bestowed here today. Ladies and gentlemen, it was my pleasure hosting you today as your moderator. I want to thank you for joining us, and certainly thank you for staying. And also want to remind you, in light amidst the pandemic, to continue to be safe, continue to follow the protocols as we all get through this difficult time together. God bless you, and thank you for joining us today at the inaugural lecture in honor of Dr. Rickert Allen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and goodbye.